So before we begin row 14, we're going to start stuffing the fiber fill into the body. So we're going to remove the hook and pull out a decent loop so we don't lose it. Then you're going to take your nylons, set this up here for a second. So you're going to take your nylons and we're going to cut it about a foot off up from the toe. This being that the toe is a lot tighter than, farther up the leg, and this is a big enough animal that if you try and stuff it straight into the toe, it will, well, it won't work very well. You won't be able to put in enough fiber fill to really fill out the body. So then you're going to tie a knot in the end, like so, and pull it really tight, because you don't want that coming undone. Then you're going to go here into your nylon, into that leg. What you do is you're going to just turn it inside out. This way the knot is on the inside, and if someone does reach through, they can't untie it. And you also just don't have that potentially sticking out of anything. Alright, so this is where we are at the moment. So now you're just going to take your fiber fill. You're going to start stuffing it in here. It's always a little bit awkward to begin with, but just put a good amount in there, and then you're going to place it into the body. And so this is a really important thing to note, is that the shape of the fiber fill is what gives you the shape in the body. So you need to make sure that your fiber fill looks good and lays well. So one of the things that I do is instead of just shoving it in, which you do a good amount of that, certainly, but I also tend to kind of rake it with my fingers toward the edges so that I fill in any lumps, like right here. There's not really a lot of stuffing, but there's more right here. So, so you just kind of, to work it in, you take two fingers and just rake it apart, pulling it in different directions, really getting the stuffing in there. And then you kind of pull it up, look at it, feel it. At this moment, we're not going to get it too full. This is just sort of the beginning. So we're stuffing it so it holds its shape a little bit better. But as we go a little bit farther along, we will stuff it much fuller. Alright, so that's where we're going to stop on the fiber fill for now. And so as we go, we're just going to, keep crocheting around, and we'll just have to move our nylon back and forth to accommodate us. So we'll insert our hook back through our loop here, and we'll get started on row 14. So row 14 begins with a single crochet and then a feather stitch. Getting pretty used to this by now. One thing that is going to be a little bit different is after the feather, we will be doing a decreasing stitch. Alright, so we'll go down and gather all of our loops. Oops. That one really doesn't want to go on. There we go. Alright, so we're finishing our securing stitch here. And so now we're going to do a decrease stitch. So just like before, we're going to work through the front loops of the next 2 stitches, gather our 2 loops, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and then we'll start another feather stitch. And we're going to do that 5 times. So we'll have 5 feathers, and then we'll pick it back up. Alright, so here we are. We've just finished our 5 feathers and the decrease immediately following. And now we're going to do an additional decrease. So this is different from all the other things we've been doing. So we're going to have these 2 decreases right in a row. But I did that so that our feathers overlap a little bit better. So now we'll be doing a feather stitch. So I've been doing this crochet along. I've realized that it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to crochet with your hands out in front of you and not have that like third contact point of it, you know, sitting on your lap or, you know, just kind of held up against you. So that's how I typically crochet. I think that's how most people typically crochet. It's a lot harder to have your work out in front of you and to be able to manage it, especially as they get to be such big and kind of wobbly toys. So, I'm learning. It's interesting. It's fun. Alright, so we'll do our securing stitch. And then all we have left to do is single crochet 7 across the front. 1, 2, 3. 6, 7. And that is the end of row 14. Row 15 begins with a feather stitch, followed by a decrease. Alright, so we'll do our securing stitch here. And then we'll do a decrease. And we're going to do that 4 more times for a total of 5 feather stitches. And it is important to note that as we do these decreases, we will have some feathers that land exactly on top of each other. You know, before we've been trying to keep this pattern where we you know, we have the overlap kind of at the join, but as we get up here, we're going to have some feathers stacking exactly on top of each other, and that's okay. So we just finished our last feather stitch, so we have 5, and now we're going to do the last decrease following it, and all that's left is to single crochet 5 across the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that brings us to the end of row 15. The row 16 begins with a single crochet followed by a feather stitch. We are still trying to preserve the overlapping feathers as much as possible. Do our securing stitch, followed by a decrease. So we're going to go ahead and do that 3 more times for a total of 4 feather stitches. So once you finish your 4 feathers and the decrease directly following, all that's left is to single crochet these last 3 stitches. And as soon as we finish this row, we're going to get a lot of stuffing, and we're going to really start to pack in the body. So like before, you're going to kind of pull out a longer, I guess, loop. Pull out your crochet hook, and we're going to dive in here to the nylon. And we're just going to start putting more fill in here. And also, like before, as always, we're going to kind of rake, with our fingers out toward the sides. And we're just going to keep doing that until this feels right. Like right now, if you look at it, it's a little bit short and squatty. Like I can fit a lot more stuffing down here in the bottom to make it really fill out. So I'm going to work on that. So I'm pretty happy with how this is starting to look. You can see the shape has filled out a lot better. And you can kind of see those black flecks just a little bit in through here. So we're going to keep on crocheting. We're going to start with row 17. So for row 17, we're going to do 2 single crochets followed by a decrease. And we're going to repeat that 4 times. So we'll have 12 stitches at the end. Alright, so this is your very last chance to add any stuffing. I think mine is pretty well filled out, so I'm just going to move on to row 18, which is decrease 6. So we're just going to go around decreasing all of our stitches. And if you've stuffed and it's like too tight, or sometimes the stitches can get really loose up here if there's so much stuffing and you're trying to close something off. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll like artificially push the stuffing down too much so I can, pull my stitches closer together as I work so that they come out neater and they're not quite so so stretched apart. All right, this brings us to the very end of the body. So in our next video, we're going to start increasing and building out the head. So it's going to be one continuous piece. You're not going to cut or tie off anything, and we'll keep stuffing into the same nylon as well. So I will see you on the next video when we begin with the head. Alright, we are on part 6 of our snowy owl crochet, and we're just about to begin the head, starting from the body. So row 1 of the head is going to be increase times 6. So we're just going to work around each of our 6 stitches here, doing an increase stitch. Alright, that was our last increase. So it brings us to row 2, where we're going to actually do the same thing. But now we have 12 stitches all the way around, and we're going to increase in each of those 12 stitches. So we'll finish our last increase here. And that brings us to the end of row 2. You should have 24 stitches all the way around. Now for row 3, the pattern we're going to follow is going to be single crochet, then an increase stitch. And we're going to go ahead and do that 12 times. So at the end of this row, we will have 36 stitches. So that brings us to the end of row 3. We've got 36 stitches, and the next 2 rows, 4 and 5, are pretty simple. We're just going to single crochet 36 stitches. So just put 1 single crochet into each one of the existing stitches. So go ahead and do that, and we'll start again on row 6. Row 6 begins by doing 5 single crochets, followed by an increase. 3, 4, and 5. And an increase. And you're going to do that pattern for a total of 6 times. So by the time we get back to our stitch marker, we will have 42 stitches. Alright, for the next 2 rows, rows 7 and 8, we're going to be single crocheting 42. So just putting a single crochet in each one of the existing stitches. And go ahead and do that, and I will see you back here for row 9. So you can see that our owl head is already taking shape pretty quickly. In this next row, it's going to take shape even more. So for row 9, we're going to be doing single crochet 5. And then we're going to be doing a decrease stitch. So for that invisible decrease, just work through the front loop of each of the stitches and pull your needle through, or your hook through. So we're going to do that 5 more times for a total of 6 times, and we'll have 36 stitches at the end. Row 10 and 11 are going to be single crochet 36 stitches in the existing loops. So go ahead and do that, and we'll pick this up again on row 12. Row 12 is going to be single crochet 4, then a decrease. And we're going to do that 6 times, and the end will have 30 stitches. So now we are on row 13, and so row 13 and 14 are going to be similar to what we've been doing here lately, just single crochet 30 into the existing stitches. So go ahead and do that, and we will pick up at row 15. Alrighty, we are done with row 14. So what we're going to do before we start row 15, and it'll probably take up the rest of this video, is we're going to start stuffing the head. So first thing you're going to do is unwind your nylon because it's probably good and wound up. Go. Now I've got a good spot to put it in. So remember, this is not the last time we're going to stuff it, so you don't have to get it perfectly stuffed right now. We're just going to kind of get it started in there so we can get a feel for the shape and also kind of get it packed down. You can't see it because I've hidden it. Down in here to begin with. So remember to use that technique of raking toward the corners, and then also you can press down, you know, pushing kind of intentionally into the bottom that sometimes doesn't get as well filled out as the top does. And we want it to be nice and smooth all the way up. Alright, so this is why it's so important to look at what you're doing when you're stuffing. Because look at how ski-wampus this is. I've got a big bulge here. I've got a little bit smaller here. I mean, it's just very, very uneven. And the stuffing plays such a huge role in what our animal looks like. So make sure to stop every once in a while, look at it, and make sure you fill in any loose spots so you have a really natural looking head. So kind of on that same note, it is important to remember that it is going to be a little bit more flat here across the bottom. Because we had those increasing rows. And what we're going to do here in a little bit is we're going to kind of fasten the head down a little bit so it'll lose a little bit of that look. And as we stuff and it all rounds out, it's going to come look very natural. So that's where we're going to have to end this video for now. In the next video, we'll go ahead and finish off the head, and we'll finish stuffing as well. And hopefully we'll have time to secure the head and I'll be able to show you what we're doing there. So take care, and I will see you in the next video. Hey there, and welcome back to the Snowy Owl Crochet Along. Today we are going to begin row 15, and we're going to be finishing up the head. So we'll go ahead and stuff it here in the next couple rows and then finish it all off. So let's get started. Row 15 is going to be single crochet 3 and a decrease stitch. And we're going to do that 6 times. So at the end we'll have 24 stitches in total. So we'll finish up this last decrease. And that brings us to the end of row 15. For row 16, it's pretty simple. We're just going to single crochet 24. Alright, so we've just finished up row 16, and we're going to take this opportunity to stuff the head a little bit more. Right now, you can see that the stuffing is really sitting in sort of a triangular fashion, so we're going to stuff a little bit more up here into these upper rows. So another thing that's kind of important to think about when you're stuffing is that you don't make the head more densely stuffed than the body. So while you're going along, you just kind of want to check and feel and see just how tight you've packed your stuffing in there. So at the moment, I think, well, you can see I've got kind of a weird shape here, so I'm going to push it a little bit more to there. But other than that, I think I'm pretty good. So we'll go ahead and get started on the next row here in a second. Another thing that you can do if your nylon, if you're losing stuffing out of your nylon, you can tie just kind of like a loose knot in it. Mine's doing fine, so I'm not going to worry about it right now, but just be aware. Alright, so for row 17, we are going to be decreasing 12. So we're just going to go through each of our stitches and decrease. So at the end of the row, we will have 12 stitches. And so you can see that we've decreased quite a lot. Our hole's a lot smaller than it was before. So at this point, this is kind of your last chance to stuff if you need to. So I think I'm going to fill in a little bit more up here. So I'm going to just pack in a little bit more stuffing. And then we will go ahead and get started on our last row, which is row 18. Row 18 is decrease 6. So at the end of this row, we will have only 6 stitches. And last stitch. And there we go. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to pull my nylon up a little bit here. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. You want to make sure not to lose it, have it fall down. And so then you're just going to tie a knot in the top. I'm going to do my kind of basic knot, just like this. Get it good and securely tied. We'll triple knot it just for good effect. Tuck those tails in there. We're going to cut a yarn tail about 4 to 5 inches. Go ahead and just pull your hook on through like so. Then we're just going to gather these remaining stitches. Alrighty, so to gather these stitches, we're just going to take your smaller hook, the 4.25 millimeter hook that we're going to be using later to make the eyes and the nose, and you're going to put it under the, I guess, the outside loop of each stitch and just pull it through. This way you're going along and gathering up all of your stitches. Then when you have them all gathered, you're going to pull it tight. Just like so. And you're going to knot it off. You can really make any sort of knot that works for you, as long as it's good and secure. Then when you feel you have a pretty strong knot, you can go ahead and weave in the ends. And this is what our snowy owl looks like right now. So I would say mine looks a little bit flat across the top at the moment. So to kind of combat that, I'm just going to do a little bit of shaping with the, you know, kind of trying to figure out how I can get that shape to look a little bit better. Because so much really is dependent on the stuffing inside. But I would say overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. So strictly for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use a little bit of gray yarn to show you how to use the, or to how to do the invisible join. Normally you would be using about a foot of the white yarn we've been using so far. So what you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook through the last row of the body, and pull your yarn through. So you've got about half on one side, half on the other. Then you're going to go into the second row of the head, insert your hook, and pull half of your strand through. Then you're going to go back down into the body, and you want your hook to be coming through that same hole that the gray yarn came out of. And then you're going to pull this through. And you're going to keep doing that where you weave kind of from the top down into the bottom, always making sure that you go through this, like the same hole repeatedly, because what that does is when you pull it tight, it allows it to join up pretty seamlessly, almost as if, you know, it didn't even exist. And if I was using the white yarn, you wouldn't be able to see it. So you're going to go ahead and do that. You're going to work one side, one half around this way, and the other half around the other way. And every couple of stitches you're going to pull tight, because if you save it to the end, it doesn't work very well. You usually just end up breaking your yarn and getting really upset. So I've switched to the white yarn now, and I'm just working along. It's a little bit hard to see because of the feathers, but I'm just working along, doing my invisible join here in the back, and pulling tight every few stitches or so. And when I get here to about the middle of the back, I'll go ahead and work through the other side. Alright, so once you work both halves of your strand around to the back, and they're in the same stitch, forgive me, and you've pulled tight and everything's secured, you're just going to knot it off. And then you're going to weave in the ends. All right. And there you have it. This is what our snowy owl looks like at the moment. All we have left to do now is the eyes, the beak, and the feet, and we'll be done.